Just going to share my screen. All right. Looks like we're at the top of the hour, so let's get started. Good afternoon and welcome to Keep Your PACS, Fix Your Workflow. We'll start with a brief presentation and then we'll jump into a demonstration, and we're going to leave time at the end for QA. So just as a little bit of housekeeping, please, as we go, feel free to submit questions using the chat panel. We should be able to moderate those questions and we'll field those at the end. So thanks again for joining us. So whether you're a radiologist or you're in IT or a PACS administrator or you're a practice leader or administrator, you're in the right place. We're excited to see you. So we'll go ahead. I'm Kyle Lawton. I'm co-founder and CEO of NewVue. I've been in radiology since 1990. So I'm excited to be here with you today very much. And joining me is our sales team, but also presenting along with me will be Patrick Skane. He's Director of Sales. He'll lead some of the walkthrough for the demo, and our sales team is standing by to listen to your questions, and we'll follow up following the webinar. So we're going to go through today's flow like this. We're going to talk a little bit about our founding story. And then we're going to talk about how that team has learned, what they've learned over the last 20 years of being involved in workflow orchestration, and how we've translated that into a solution that we can use to modernize the workflow on top of your existing stack. So then we'll get into the solution specifically, which is Empower Suite. We'll talk to the three pillars: the intelligent worklist, the radiologist cockpit, and some quality workflows, the different components, and how they unify a multi-PACS and reporting platform. And then we'll do a demo. So we'll show you how we launch contextually into your current systems and embed reporting and provide a workflow that's based on an auto next that really will be more efficient for your radiologists. And as I mentioned before, we'll save time for Q&A at the end. So, all right, let's move on here to the next. Great. So I'm hoping that I saw a lot of familiar faces that were joining the webinar. So thanks for coming back to see us, and looking forward to meeting some of you that we've not met before. But I'm hoping broadly folks remember the company PeerVue. That was us. I founded PeerVue in early 2000s, and our team helped create really what's become known as the intelligent worklist. More recently referred to as radiology workflow orchestration. And I'm absolutely proud and absolutely thrilled to share that we've brought that core team back together. I think there's more than 7 of us from the original team back as NewVue. And we didn't just build another worklist. We've fully capitalized on really 20 years of hands-on, very specialized experience in this area. And we've now taken that knowledge and leveraged cloud and modern AI and large language models to really deliver truly a new way to orchestrate work, while again preserving your existing infrastructure and investment in PACS and in reporting in some cases. So in the PeerVue area, the cool technology, as it were, was rules engines and the flexibility that gave you, along with some seamless integration to existing systems. We've taken that further. So we've as PeerVue, we scaled to hundreds of sites. We integrated with dozens of PACS and reporting tools. And in 2012, we were acquired by McKesson. And that the solution was then rebranded as Workflow Intelligence, and we reached even more customers through that channel or that organization. And many of the original PeerVue teams stayed on with McKesson for a decade, all the way through Optum. In fact, they continued to deploy and support workflows in academic sites, at IDNs, community hospitals, and reading groups, not in just North America but worldwide. So an immense amount of experience. And now, as NewVue, we're taking orchestration really to the next generation, the next level. It's a cloud-native, AI-enabled platform that unifies multiple PACS. It dramatically reduces IT burden. There's no more babysitting dozens of or hundreds of filtered lists and rules engines. Instead, you can deploy NewVue on top of your current stack to modernize the workflow and give your radiologist a more contemporary, better user experience. You can achieve all this with the added benefit of having the agility now to add volume or sites without a 6-month massive workflow orchestration project. So in short, keep your PACS, fix your workflow with a platform that's designed today for today to scale. And coming back as NewVue, we really were able to leverage a lot of relationships that we made in the industry over the years. And so really, in PowerSuite, we've tapped into that experience. So we bring really 3 pillars into one cloud native platform. The first is the intelligent work list. It's a known quantity. People understand that. Our intelligent work list eliminates the sprawl of static lists and lots of rules. You don't have to make a work list for every clinical scenario you can think of, or even for every radiologist. It normalizes inputs. So the stream of HL7 data coming into the system, we can automatically normalize that and then prioritize dynamically. So using things like clinical urgency, STAT, SLA timers. We look at radiologists' subspecialty, their licensure, whether they're credentialed, what their preferences are, and of course the current workflow load as well. So the concept, of course, being we always get the right case to find the right reader without IT babysitting filters or manually assigning cases. The radiologist cockpit, we're one of one here. The radiologist cockpit simplifies really the entire desktop and the radiologist's experience. So prior report information, clinical history, AI findings are all gathered, collected, and curated and put into one place, along with embedded reporting. So there's no more hunting across systems. With Auto Next, radiologists can move from case to case in a much more confident flow. They don't have to keep going back and forth to a work list, interrogating it to know where they should be reading. The work finds them. And then, of course, this just dramatically simplifies the radiologist workflow on desktop. So they end up with their cockpit and the viewer. And call back to our legacy, of course, in peer review, where we really innovated around quality workflows, made that possible to do a lot of work at PACS, some gaps that were there before. And in this case, in this new generation of solution, quality isn't bolted on here. We've built it in. It's woven into the workflow. Things like peer review, critical results with escalation, tech QC, follow-ups, etc., all inside the reading flow. And that gives us, visibility to throughput, compliance, RVU tracking. And so, quality happens naturally without slowing throughput. It's just part of the flow. I started to mention how, we sort of springboarded on our reputation as peer review and leveraged a lot of relationships. That really comes down to our integration prowess. We were already good at it at peer review, and we've really taken a page from that playbook as NewVue. So one of the things we're most proud of is how cleanly NewVue integrates with what you already run. So we work with PACS viewers like Philips and Telespace, Sectra, Visage, Konica, just to name a few, and clinical systems, Epic, Cerner, and reporting. From standalone systems like PowerScribe to embedded systems like MD.ai, RAD AI, RAD Pair, smart reporting, and more. And so, under the hood, we're very standards first, support FHIR, HL7, and we're always integrating with these systems, launching them in context with SSO, and always opening the right study with the right viewer, with the right patient context along with it. So the net of all this, again, is you don't rip and replace, you modernize on top of your stack, including multi-PACS environments with one consistent workflow. And it's not just theory. Groups of every size are already running with NewVue. We've added 10 customers, in fact, in the past year. Some shown here are live, some are in deployment. But I wanted to show you this as a quick snapshot of where we're engaged today. This is a sample across segments to show, where NewVue adds value. Large academic IDNs, a multi-region, multi-PACS standardizing, with curated work lists while honoring local needs and again, always reducing IT rule maintenance. Baptist, Alabama, excited to be working with them. Over 500,000 annual procedure volume. Their focus is being able to have more visibility on RVUs for frankly the first time, having the EMR context, the clinical context, uh, collected and scrubbed for relevancy and presented to the radiologist in the cockpit. Specialty reporting integrations. I believe we're doing Iconopedia there for Mammo. Zuanga Perezi, a very well-established organization, reading group. We replaced a first-generation workflow orchestrator there, which they had developed more than 200 work lists and had 1,200 or more rules in the background, but they were still playing air traffic control. So we replaced all that, got them down to just 2 curated queues, simpler operations, faster reads. A couple more here. Precision Imaging, they're an outpatient group. We eliminated manual assignments, unified reporting into the cockpit, and gave them clinical context, powering over 12 rads, and they're growing quickly. And then the last two here, HDR, a mixed environment here. So they read for over three hospitals, single overlay. So we're a single overlay, kind of combining all that, giving the radiologist one place to go, launching the appropriate viewer, and really streamlining their critical results and quality workflows as well. And then lastly, the very large Lucid Health. Again, very multi-PACS network. They chose NewVue to unify work lists or workflows and cut down redundancy at scale. And so we're proud to be working with them. So point of this is, whether it's an IDN, an academic medical center, a private group, a growing group, they're all seeing the same value. You modernize on your stack you already have, and then give your radiologist the tools and information they need in one place. And then launch the viewer. All right, cool. So with that, let's see. So you've heard kind of how we integrate, where we're deployed, a little bit of our background. And now I'm going to hand it over to Patrick. He's going to dig a little deeper into what it looks like in practice. Patrick will take you through Empower Suite. And again, as a reminder, just dropping questions as we go here, and we'll do our best to answer those at the end.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. And thanks for painting the vision of what we've built, and excited to kind of get into what does it look like and how does it feel. So this slide here really, just really highlighting we're a second generation work list. So the first generation expectations of what a workflow orchestration tool should do, the table stakes, we've built into the product. As Kyle mentioned, our best practice workflow is an auto next, and our focus is the most urgent eligible case up next for the user. And then different distribution methods. We can handle your round robin assignments. We can cover equitable distribution goals. And then a few different ways we can kind of put work in front of the user. We could do a very traditional assigned workflow where it has individual's name on the exam. We have a concept of shared or eligible work. Think of, 3 MSK guys on a shift seeing a similar pool of studies on their work list. And then we also have a concept to really improve stat or urgent case workflow, to where the traditional legacy systems, it goes to kind of a stat work list that's monitored. In our approach, if an exam meets specific clinical indications or urgencies, a stroke protocol, for example, we have the ability to put it in front of or at the top of in that up next pole position for any user who's logged in, who's eligible to look at that case. So really kind of focusing on getting that sort of those urgents, time to first image is critical. Let's put it in front of as many eyeballs as possible to tighten that goal up. And then also we can distribute to and towards specific RVU targets, whether that's by subspecialty or user. And then again, your other standard kind of table stakes things, being able to search, interrupted workflow, communication between users. As Kyle mentioned, we take a sort of curated work list approach, but I'll show you that we can still produce filtered work lists. And then as Kyle shared as well, is that integration to both the legacy systems that are out there from a viewing and reporting world, but also tightly embracing the second generations of solutions that are coming in those fields as well. Next slide, Kyle. Yeah, so this one here, of course, we're going to switch over to a demonstration. I'm going to show you guys a work list. It has cases on it. And I really find it important for everyone here to understand, how are things getting on the work list? What's driving the algorithm? So the first piece, which is up here, is kind of that urgency level, right? That from the case perspective, what case should be up next? And oftentimes that's clinical severity. We do have the ability to integrate with image-based AI tools that may be triaging exams and using those outputs to prioritize studies on the work list accordingly. And then, of course, any SLA timers that organizations have in place, whether that's counting up or down, to make sure that we're getting things in front of the right users as things are potentially lagging on the work list. The second corner here, the administrative input section, this is the kind of what, right? The how much and what people are supposed to be reading. So this is typically where we integrate with a scheduling system like a QGenda to understand shifts. This is where administratively there's RVU targets set. And oftentimes this lays in with things like referring preferences from the providers, insurance ramifications, any credentialing outputs of software, the kind of the administrative, what should people be looking at and how much. And then in the last corner, most importantly to our approach is, as Kyle mentioned, the first generations of products were workflow engine, rules engine products, right? Solutions that are extremely sensitive to data. And what we'll show you today is we've built a tool that takes that sensitivity of data out of the table, kind of using an AI algorithm. But what we've done is we built a work list that's sensitive to the user who's logged in. So for the first time, each individual radiologist, their skill set, et cetera, is kind of tied to who they are as a user at login. And they become an input to the algorithm, as opposed to in a first generation system to be a user that just reviews the output and kind of navigates what they're supposed to do based on their skill set. We want that skill set tied to the user. And what we'll show you today in the demonstration is that their profile doesn't just include the things they can and can't see. We can turn things on and off for users, but we're also get the ability to introduce preference as in point for each individual user. And then the radiologists get a little bit of control on how they're driving their up next workflow based on their eligible exams in real time from the work list. So let me switch gears and share my screen so I can show you the work list. I'm also going to temporarily go off camera so you're not looking at my ears while I'm looking at my other monitor. All right. So this is the NewVue work list, folks. So it gives you kind of that idea. I'll walk through kind of what you're looking at here at a very high level, introduce some concepts and functionality that we've thought of and put into place, and give you kind of a nice tour of what we've built, and then take you from the radiologist viewpoint into the cockpit. As Kyle mentioned, we've as a second generation solution, our goal is not to just launch more applications for your radiologist to interact with. We built a framework to bring those applications and information together into a single system for the first time. And then as we close, I'll give you a very quick kind of overview of the back end of the solution, introducing kind of how we manage the data perspective, and I'll even kind of walk you through how we apply users to work in a quick scenario. So what you're looking up here in the field, again, it's a work list. As Kyle mentioned, our approach is a single curated work list for the users. Our goal is, we know what shift you're on and we know what skill set you're on. Why can't I just log in and see that work in a single list? And that effectively is what you're seeing here on the screen. We do give you the opportunity. We understand that we're replacing systems that have been around since the dawn of PACS, and filtered work lists are kind of status quo of what the industry is dealing with today. We also give you that opportunity if there's a desire to chop up the work into filtered work lists, you can do it. In fact, we can do it in a very easy way. And that will be the use case I'll show you today, is that we can change the way filtered work list or any work list is built based on our approach. Just a quick walkthrough of the screen. You heard me mention sort of stats and priorities. You've got a list here up at the top here in case the radiologist likes to condense real estate, which is fairly common. And then your color-coded priority scale is running on the left-hand side of the screen. And these left-hand side of the screen is where also the interrupted workflow takes place. So for example, it turns to a microphone, it turns to, we've passed reporting context, it turns to a microphone if someone is reporting rather, an eyeball if someone is looking at the image, and then a pencil if it's in draft status. And then individual radiologists have a little bit of control to decide if they want to, in that shared work environment, do they want to see that an exam has been picked up, or do they want to turn off and just have that exam disappear? As far as text on the screen here, we are an HL7 driven solution. So of the HL7 traffic that we receive, each organization has the ability to kind of define or control what kind of is available and visible on the work list to the radiologist as far as columns of information, number of lines, etc. And all of these individual columns can be dynamically searched to look at cases. And then we also give the user the opportunity to potentially search across their entire body of work for just kind of general keywords or free text. So let's just say I'm looking for kind of any exam that includes the word possible in the clinical indication, and it's going to bring those studies directly to the top. So just a little bit of way where you can dynamically search within columns, but also free text search your entire body of work. Now, a few things to point out as well is one of the things in that kind of up next, kind of auto next workflow is that when we were sensitive to building this was around the concept of cherry picking, right? The idea of users navigating a work list or multiple work lists, batch reading kind of studies, which effectively can take them out of the workflow for a certain amount of time. And oftentimes that leads to kind of missed or delayed stats. And then the other piece we often hear is that kind of you get users kind of poaching RVUs from other users when they can kind of grab other things. We wanted to provide elements of optional control, and really our focus is on visibility of exams. So for example, we can control how deep a user can see into exams. So if I'm tied to a specific QGenda shift, I can only see that information. We have the ability to control how much work is visible to the user at a given time. And some of our sites take that and the radiologist just sees what's up next. And other sites pick a number, 5, 10, 15 cases, whatever's comfortable, with the idea that, practices are experiencing a shortage of radiologists and a high volume of studies. So being able to kind of control the amount of work visible, it gives people a feeling of comfort that they're kind of getting through their tasks. And the third thing that we can do as an option is we can require that work, that 10 studies I'm looking at right now, get read before I've seen more cases. So again, just different levels of control depending on the behavior and goals of the team to really be able to restrict how much work is visible by an individual user as well. One of the other things I'll point out to is our mood settings that I talked about. So again, in the context of I'm in an up next workflow, I may be looking at 10 cases at a time. What happens if those 10 cases don't get me excited, or I might be feeling kind of not 100% in that moment looking at that list? And we give you the opportunity, we have the option to impact your mood on the studies being seen. We use RVU value as level of difficulty, but the mechanism in place is that if I'm feeling good and maybe I want to read the 10 highest RVUs I'm eligible to see as part of my shift, precision mode presents those studies to the user. Alternating gives you a high-low cadence, cool down, kind of a high RVU to low RVU cadence. In Zen mode, I refer to as kind of your after lunch. I'm full, I'm tired. Give me the lowest RVUs I'm eligible to read so I can get the brain jump started again. It's important to note that we're not assigning new cases to users. It's really the opportunity to just shuffle the body of work that I presented or eligible to read at a time so that I can stay in that efficient up next workflow. A few other things to point out. We do have an RVU tracker up here on the right-hand side of the screen. From an RVU perspective, we can assign to specific RVU targets. We can track those over the course of the day. And then we also provide the opportunity to gamify or leverage things like the quality workflows, peer reviews, and consults that could be conducted in the system, and those activities that aren't tied to transactional reading that you want to encourage for better behavior, more fostering a more of an element of teamwork, can be given an aggregate RVU value. So it gives you kind of the opportunities. You can see here, I can see my reports, and I can also see kind of what my peripheral tasks were for the day. And then the individual radiologist as well has a very quick in look and view of kind of what does my day look like? How am I doing today? Right. So as an individual being able to drill down into those metrics, and of course, similar operational style metrics where the administration team can kind of get RVUs and exam throughput and turnaround times as kind of operational metrics from the application. The last thing I'm going to point out on the screen here before I kind of transition into the quality workflows in the cockpit is this concept of active backlog. So active backlog, so one important distinction of the NewVue product is that we aren't a rules-based system that's dropping work into static work list buckets, right? It's not uncommon for me to hear that a user went home sick and now I have to move data from one work list to another work list to make sure that it's read, etc. Right? There's efforts because they're just essentially organized buckets of work. With the NewVue system, we're actually distributing work actively based on the users logged into the system right now kind of approach. So it's a much more real-time way to get work in front of users. And that's why we use active backlog intentionally. So it's going to be your traditional backlog, right? Oldest studies. As I shared, we take into consideration preference. So based users who are logged in, if you're leveraging the preference element of the application, this is also going to show you where the lowest preference cases are. And then it's also, again, based on users logged in. So if your MSK team is in a webinar like this, looking at the newest ortho templating product, your active backlog during that time will be heavy in orthopedics for that example. And then as they log in, it's going to start moving that work off the backlog. And our goal is to give you both visibility and functionality. So again, you've got the visibility, and as an individual user, I'm only seeing as my login active backlog cases that I am eligible to read, which is an important distinction. It gives you the opportunity to distribute equitably off that backlog to users throughout the course of the day. You can gamify participation in the backlog coverage. For example, if everyone reads 10 a shift, I get a little gold star here up in our gamification section. That gold star can have an aggregate RVU value. So kind of thinking if I don't pitch in, I'll never be 100% for that shift of work. And then the last thing we could do, it wouldn't be uncommon for users to indicate a chat out to a group that simply says, hey, MSK backlog heavy, please help if you can. And maybe there's an RVU bump during that time window as well. So again, visibility and function to kind of the lower desirable work as well. So to shift gears, just from a buttons perspective, you heard us mention AI integration with image-based AI. So you're seeing some examples here of that process. And then as Kyle mentioned, our peer review workflow routes of quality workflows can also be a function of the work list itself. So if I'm opened up a study and the RAD has the option to indicate if can they report it, yes or no, indicate what the finding is, and then effectively we can create workflow off this radiologist's inputs to be able to drive work, notify support staff, etc., get that off his plate so he's focused on reading so it can be adjudicated. And from a follow-up management perspective, whether it's peer review, overreads, or critical results, is going to have a similar access-based work list that's user permission-based for the appropriate adjudication and closing the loop on the exams. And so, as Kyle mentioned, we integrate with a lot of applications, and we can perform that integration level as a first generation solution does. We can launch stuff. So it's not uncommon for your list of work lists today to launch things like an Epic in context, and a PowerScribe in context, and a viewer in context. And we can pass context and share and kind of open up a bunch of windows for your end users the same way that's happening today. But we felt that a second generation work list requires true second generation workflow. And with our approach, if we're getting the right cases in front of the users and are able to do so in a single curated work list, we're taking you from work list back to this is my work today, right? That body of work. And we want to give you an easy way to, instead of launching systems where you then need to go interrogate for information, give me a one-stop shop where I can do everything that I need to. And that's what brings us to the radiologist cockpit. So again, as Kyle mentioned, this is an instrument panel and it's an integration framework where this isn't necessarily a patient jacket that NewVue has gone away and built and said, adopt this. We built the framework. So as Kyle mentioned, we can fit in at our customers' technology stack, and it gives us the unique opportunity to build the custom patient jacket with each individual customers that we have based on what they are leveraging to improve their radiologist workflow. So a quick overview, some of the things we just kind of talked about and showed. The work list is just a function of the cockpit. It can be expanded, I can interrogate it, but effectively, as we mentioned, really just need to be concerned with what's up next. The chat functionality is built directly into the cockpit as well, and I can share links with users and perform consults if we need to. The RVU tracking and gamification is still visible and carried over. And even the quality workflows act as a function of the work list, whether it's a peer review or a tech QC. We have the ability for the radiologist to complete those tasks as well within the single frame. But what we are expanding on is the information that we are providing to the radiologist. And so to kind of walk you through the information window, we of course can provide you with the historical radiology reports. We can provide the HL7 textual output findings from any AI algorithms that might be in place. So it's not uncommon for RADs to kind of see things in the image viewer, but not have necessarily the text or the information that kind of sits with it. We can bring that information forward and provide it in a very consistent place. So if your use of AI grows, it's not like you're needing to look at new locations for where that information is going to be available for you as an end user from a textual display. And then very excitingly, we can integrate with EMRs using Fire queries, which will allow us to bring over very specific relevant exam information for that patient and share it with the radiologist. And then we also present it on a nice kind of clean timeline that can be toggled through as well, so they can see how that patient's progress over time. And then again, in the new world, second generation solutions in the AI space, like generative reporting, become opportunities where you're not dealing with a thick client workstation based application, where we're now dealing with a lot of flexible, lightweight technology. So whether it's a generative reporting tool like we're showing here on the screen to provide a home, or another AI application that may have windows or widgets or things that you're interacting with, it becomes a conversation from a future perspective of how can we bring this into the cockpit and continue to give our radiologists a single clean view of information. And our approach, if you really are engaged with the second generation kind of overlay approach, it shouldn't matter where you're looking at the images, that should be consistent, but our approach is right case, the right information, and with the second generation reporting tools, you're kind of telling the images what you see, and then you're able to move on to the next case. So we really feel that when you bring second generation technology together kind of as that overlay in your existing legacy stack, we can really give it superpowers from a speed and information perspective. All right, so I've kind of walked you guys through the front end, and now I'd really like to give you guys an overview of the back end and how we bake the bread, right? So it's not uncommon for any worklist vendor to show a presentation that gives you a pretty user-friendly UI that radiologists will enjoy interacting with. The challenge is oftentimes what does that lift look like, and what is the ongoing administration of management of that solution? So I'm logged in here. It's got a little bit more administrative kind of functionality that you're seeing from a work list. I'm a bit of a super user from this login. And I want to just point out that there's two fundamental things that we as the NewVue team were considering when we built this product. The first of which is it's not a rules-based engine. Oftentimes we hear their cases fall through the cracks. Rules didn't match, new data was encountered, and that exam didn't show up where it was supposed to. In our world, if we have an HL7 order for an exam, it is living on a work list waiting to be visible to a radiologist. So it's that awareness of nothing falls through the cracks. And as a default, instead of falling through the cracks, more eyeballs might see it, right? So it's kind of a better problem to have than trying to find where an exam went. The second function that we wanted to build into this system is oftentimes troubleshooting problems with a first generation work list involve looking at SQL logs and updating queries and then looking at SQL logs again. How can we kind of change it from solving a puzzle to being very straightforward and in your face? And the second foundational principle is that everything I need to do, whether it's reviewing full HL7 logs and traffic for an individual exam and patient directly within the application, to down to impersonating my users, right? With a curated work list, you have 100 radiologists, they all could be looking at something different. So being able to very simply go in, see what that individual user is seeing, both what's visible and not visible to them yet, and then to be able to do the troubleshooting you need, putting people's names on it, merging patients, etc. You guys kind of get the idea, but our goal is that this is your home base, whether you're a radiologist or an administrative user. And so with those two foundations, as Kyle shared, embracing AI, right, where we're not worried about sensitivities to data. And so what we've built is a large language model that goes against the HL7 information, specifically the source exam description information. And all we do is kind of use the AI to force it into a very standard normalized exam definition. So for sort of from a brass taxes perspective, if you think of all the ways someone can order a head CT with and without contrast, abbreviations, characters, spacing, etc., there's a lot. And so what our AI does is simply just understand that we're dealing with a head CT with and without contrast, whereas a rules engine, you need to either manually normalize that every time you see it, or you have to have rules for all the different ways you could possibly encounter that exam, right? Not a great use of time and effort and very fragile. The AI has a few kind of easy buttons and fixes. So the green button here basically says a user has agreed with what the AI has put it into. The purple checkbox basically means the AI has pushed it into a category, but a user hasn't confirmed. So in this one, as you can see, we've got 9 apostrophes, probably wouldn't match a rule, but we've automatically categorized that study. And if you as an end user, right, this is still your system as customers. If you think that temporal bones is a bit too specific, you can change that to CT head with and without. And now you've officially kind of identified what that study will be forever and ever next time the AI sees it. And really, instead of worrying about rules and all the ways things are said, you're really just worried about things that the AI encountered that were either new or weird, right? And it's a very visual, here is this kind of issue with the AI dictionary that's visible here. And also, as well, down to our work list, letting you know that, hey, there was a problem here as well. So we wanted to make sure that even if there is kind of a bit of a hiccup in the kind of the processes working, that it's both visible and, as I just showed you, being able to change those parameters and identify what these exams mean is a very, very simple quick and easy point and click process. Now, what we do once we now have the exam dictionary and we understand this is all of the exams the organization performs, we then work with our customers to kind of understand what do those exams mean to you, typically body part subspecialty perspective. And then we're automatically pulling in things like modalities and statuses and ordering providers, et cetera. And these are constantly being normalized and managed with the system. So without spending an overabundant amount of time on this, I kind of safe to say we've got a single sheet of music that we have and we understand for each of our customers. Now we have to focus on who are the consumers, right? Who are the end users, which is the radiologists. So we have a few different ways that we can profile the users. And instead of just showing you different windows and point and clicks, let's work a use case together. So let's say I've got two radiologists. They both read ultrasound studies. One of the users reads everything. The other user reads everything except prostates and thyroids, right? So in a rules-based world, you're managing that with two work lists and having to constantly massage the data to the right locations, or you've got one work list and some person sees stuff they don't like to see and just ignore them, right? So both, one frustrating for your radiologist, the other frustrating for your back-end administrators. How do we ease that burden? So to kind of walk you through that process, we have the typical binary turning things on or off. So we'll use our first four users and say, here's my four ultrasound users. And this kind of by design, if I unclick Nuke Medicine for Jen, she will never see an exam on her work list when she logs in. That's a Nuke Med exam, right? That's kind of how the process works. That modality is off or on for a user. We can do the same for body parts. So again, to kind of tease out the use case, let's say that our first two users don't read prostates and thyroids, and our third and fourth users do. So again, binary on and off functionality. And we do the same thing for things like facilities, right? The output of credentialing. Oftentimes it's a lot of rules when if you've got sites with different locations, et cetera. This allows us to just simply turn them off or on for a specific user. Insurance is another one. If I'm in grads that read in different states, can they read Medicaid and Medicare insurance or not? So again, an easy way to mitigate that. And we can even go down as far as to carve out very specific exam descriptions, right? It's not uncommon for an MSK reader to not read scoliosis studies. So we can kind of peel out the procedures as well. And so that's how we turn things on and off. But I mentioned about preference for the first time being able to take into consider preference as an input for our users. And so this is kind of an example of preference by the way of ordering providers, right? This is an opportunity to kind of get a ranked choice, if you will, of if an exam comes in from a location or provider, who does it go to? Do they like certain readers and not like certain readers? So in the context of here, Dr. Barry orders exam, loves Jen, wants Jen's name on it. If it hits SLA or Jen's not available, it's okay to go to Tim. He's wishy-washy about Aaron, but can live with it, but doesn't like me, right? So I'm blocked from this ordering provider. Now we take this preference capability and we spread this out across all the other options I just showed you binary. So we've got an organization, the Baptist of Alabama group down in that Kyle had mentioned. They are a smaller practice where most of their rads read everything, and they've got two rads that read mammo. So what they're doing is setting up their view of the work as a preference by subspecialty. I prefer neuro over gastro over body over, and then not credentialed for mammo. And the hope is when people are logged in, they're seeing more of what the subspecialties they prefer to read instead of batch reading and finding them themselves and taking them out of the workflow. And then we also have an academic that uses this within subspecialty. So let's say Kyle and I are both MSK readers. I prefer upper extremities. He prefers lower extremities. We're both logged in at the same time. I'm going to see the body parts I like to read. He's going to see the body parts he likes to read, even though we're still technically viewing the same body of work and subspecialty, right? So our goal, again, with the shortage of radiologists and increase of volume, how can we deliver a better body of work that's more enjoyable for our end users so they're not spending much of their time interrogating around the systems they interact with to find those studies themselves? Can we help you take the leap to give them a better experience? And so I've showed you how we normalize data. I've shown you binary and preference from an end user perspective. And now I'll kind of show you how do we build a work list, right? So again, as I mentioned, we can create sort of any filtered work list for any type of situation. So let's build that ultrasound work list. And so now I've built that work list. And now in legacy first generation world, this is where the problems or fun or however you want to look at it start, right? I'm building rules, I'm finding crosswalk tables, trying to figure out what are all the ways if data comes in that should qualify for the ultrasound work list. In our approach, we just say here's the body of all of the ultrasound studies. And instead of worrying about all the data that comes in, we're just simply going to say, using these kind of adorable little purple check boxes in the corner, that basically say, hey, when a user logs in and is looking at this ultrasound work list, I want to just apply them, their preferences, everything that we've just set up, their profile against this data. And it's this type of function that allows us to create that single curated work list. If we know what shift you're on, and we know the conditions of the shift, inpatient studies between 8 and 4 p.m., you really don't need to break down that any further by subspecialty and users, et cetera, because their profile, when they log in and look at that shift, is just applied. So they're seeing what they're supposed to see out of the shift they're on without you having to manage it beyond general conditions of the shift and understanding who your users are. And so again, really allows us to create very robust, simple workflow. You can, as you see, create easy filtered work lists, or again, kind of stick with our main approach of just saying when a user log in, we're just applying them to what they're looking at and combining it with targets and scheduling systems, et cetera, to paint that pretty picture for the rats. All right, so I think that's kind of the general sneak peek. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of things on the back end of the product that we would love to spend much more time to. So happy to set up any other sessions with people who are interested to talk about things like integration and statuses and priority workflow and all of the other fun components that we've really simplified on the back end to really allow us to create this very simple, straightforward, easy to use application on the front end for your radiologists. And again, to close with that cockpit strategy, we're changing it. I can log in and start doing my work. I have all the information that I need, and I can move through my day without worrying about work lists and integrations, etc.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrick. We've had a few questions, but we've answered those in the chat, so please take a peek at that, and we'll pause here for another few minutes. We're trying to do this in 45 minutes because we know how busy everyone is, and we went right to that number, which is great. So we'll hang in here for a little bit longer. If there's folks who raise a hand or type into the chat, we'll wait until about 10 of. That gives us 2 more minutes here to hang in there to address any questions that might be burning in your mind. Let's see here. Unless we don't see any, then we will call it a day. Awesome. Well, you know how to find us, and we'd love to set up an intimate demo specific to you or your site. So don't hesitate to reach out. Obviously, we'll be setting up a follow-up. This should have been recorded, so that's something that you can have access to as well. And I will just pause there to make sure that there aren't any other questions. And it looks like we're good. Really appreciate everyone joining. We had a great turnout and everyone stayed on. And we look forward to seeing you out there in the industry. So don't be shy, reach out, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks.
Everybody,
Thank you, Patrick.
you got it.